Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OASPA webinar. And it's great to be chairing this one in particular on open infrastructure, because we've got three presentations today about what's an incredibly exciting part of the scholarly landscape. And these organizations are maturing to such an extent that they are becoming incredibly useful as a research tool. But first of all, I want to say thank you to the Royal Society for sponsoring the webinar. And also, we've had more than 680 people register for us today, which is fantastic. And we usually get about 40 or 50% attending live. We've got 222 people at the moment, and it's rising. Registrants are all over the world and from 60 countries. About 50% are based in the UK and the US, and the rest are from elsewhere in the world. And they come from 400 different organizations. So we've got about 55% of registrants from academic libraries. And then with publishing organizations making up about 15%, and then the rest come from academic research backgrounds, nonprofits, charities, service or technology organizations, funders, and governmental and NGOs, among others. So it's a really great mix, and I think it's a tribute to the interest in this topic that we've got so many people here today. So for me, the infrastructure for scholarly communication is the wiring and the pipework that connects research outputs, all different types of research outputs. It connects research outputs to researchers. It helps provide provenance and attribution. It provides credibility and authority by linking to funders and to institutions. It promotes research integrity. It creates new opportunities to measure impact and to evaluate research. It enables discovery and the opportunity for new collaborations. To me, it's the essence of open science, and it's why open infrastructure is so vital, because you can't do this in a closed system. So with that, I'm going to, first what we're going to do is have the three speakers speak in sequence. And we're going to have Silvio Peroni first, who is the head of OpenCitations, and then Jason Preen, who's the head of our research, and OpenAlex. He's going to talk about OpenAlex, and then Vincent, and I'm not going to butcher his surname, who's here to talk about Thoth, but he also has a he's the founder of Punctum Open Books, and he's a scholar himself as well, and a previous OASPA board member. So without more ado, I'm going to hand over to Silvio, and I hope you enjoy the webinar, everyone.
Thank you, Katrina, for presentation. I'm just going to share my screen, and here we are. So, welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm Silvio Peroni. I work as an associate professor at the University of Bologna, and I am in a privileged position to be director of OpenCitation, which is the open infrastructure I'm going to introduce you today. I start directly with provide some information about what we do. Okay, yeah. So OpenCitation is a community-guided open science infrastructure. What we plan to do is practically to harvest and publish open bibliographic metadata, and in particular, citations data of bibliographic resources. We mainly store citation links that happens within the scholarly domain and provide them available for being reused for any purpose. It is a community-guided infrastructure because we are here still working with the community, thanks to the support of the community. The scholarly community is guiding the infrastructure. We have different bodies within our governance which take care about the governance. We have an advisory board, a council with the members of OpenCitation, and so on. I will clarify some of these aspects just in a few slides, but for administrative convenience, it is managed by the Research Center for Open Scholarly Metadata, which is an independent research center within the University of Bologna. We are providing different things. That is a data model for describing the data, bibliographic and citations data. We do made available two different databases that expose all data in CC0 to maximize their reuse. All the software that we are using and that we develop for running the infrastructure is made available on GitHub, and it is available with open source licenses in order to enable the maximizing the reuse of the software itself, not only of the data. And we made available several online services that includes, for instance, dumps of the full data sets that we have, and also systems for accessing programmatically bibliographic and citations data that we provide that are free to use and will stay free to use forever, since it is one of the strong pillars of our infrastructure. We are getting data from 5 different sources so far that are Crossref, DataCite, and National Institute of Health Open Citation Collection, which includes mainly PubMed publication and citations data, OpenAir, and the Japan Link Center, which is one of the DOI agency available worldwide. In particular, it curates bibliographic data and citations data from Japanese literature. The 2 collections that we have is, the first one is the Open Citation Index that basically contains information about the citations. So actually the links that exist between 2 bibliographic entities, the citing entity and the cited entity. All citations here are treated as first-class data entries. That means that each single citation comes with a unique identifier that is named Open Citation Identifier. So we have identifiers for the links connecting bibliographic resources, the citing and the cited entity. The information about the bibliographic information about the citing and cited entity are instead included in the other collection that is Open Citations Meta, which include all these basic metadata about publications involved in the citations exposed in the Open Citation Index. Currently, the index contains more than 2 billion citations, but we, in the next few days, we are actually expanding that collection with millions of additional citations, since we have just finished to harvest additional new citations data from Crossref and JALC in particular very recently. Among the usage of Open Citation, we have different kinds of users that are using our data. I'm just listing some of them here to showcase the different kind of usage that our data are used for. The first one is DBLP, which is very well known in the computer science area, bibliographic catalog of computer science publications, mainly articles in conferences and journals, but not only those ones. They include also software and data sets. For instance, they are using us, and in particular our citation links, to enrich their data and create, let's say, the interlinking between all the bibliographic resources they are exposing through the service. In another context, within the context of institutional repository, here there is a collaboration with the Faculty of Chemistry of the University of Belgrade that is reusing our API to grasp the citation counts of their own article they have there. This is a collaboration that has been created in the context of a European project, GRASP OS, where we are involved together with them. Here there is an old screenshot, but a few years ago, Hindawi have explored, so a publisher, have explored the possibility of reusing Open Citation data to build up graphs or related to the entities that they have. And this is just an example of usage by a publisher of the data that we have. There are researchers that have built tools for exploring citation networks. Here, for instance, there is the Pure Suggest that is using our citation graph just to propose and suggest relevant literature starting from seed papers. Of course, our data have been used and are currently using several researches out there in scientometrics and bibliometrics. And finally, but just to make this, closing this exemplar usage of Open Citations, we are also, the data that we have are also reused in the context of other existing infrastructure, and in particular OpenAir and GoTriple, that are reusing our information, our citation information, to be included in their own graph. We are part of several catalogs worldwide that list us in order to be more discoverable as an infrastructure and as a service. They include, for instance, the European Open Science Cloud EU node, the Invest in Open Infrastructure Infra Finder system. And finally, the OpenAir service catalog. We are collaborating extensively with OpenAir, and even if we are still independent as an infrastructure, we are listed among the various services that they are offering within their catalog. I would like just to thank here publicly the new advisory board that started the activity just a few weeks ago. And these are the guys that are involved, and you see from a very different kind of institutions and contexts. And I would like also to thank all the members that have served in the advisory board of OpenCitations in the past 4 years for their incredible help in improving us as an infrastructure and the related services we have worked on in the past weeks. Some of the changes that we have implemented, thanks to their contribution, that will be continued by the new member of the advisory board, will be presented in the following slides. And I will start with the new logo. This is something that we have just launched a few weeks ago. We wanted to rebrand somehow how is the perception of us within the community. We have worked a lot on the creation of this new logo that contains the usual, let's say, the common characteristics that were also included in the old logo, so the letter O and the letter C for OpenCitations, but we added additional visual supports, let's say, an eye that represent for us the curiosity and exploration that drives research, and a sign that recall the citation markups, to recall the fact that we are working on for providing access to citation links using specific technologies that are web and semantic web technologies. And more information about the logo, ideas and meaning is actually available in our blog post linked here, in case you are curious. But the logo is just part of the revision that we are doing within the infrastructure. We are rebranding entirely OpenCitations. We will launch very soon the new website that has been developed to, let's say, provide information in a more suitable way for the general audience about what we do and what we are and which services we made available in a less, let's say, project-oriented way as we have been so far. And together with OpenCitations, we are also working a lot in creating new tools, setting up new collaboration, and working actively within communities for fostering open science at the global level. Here, there is just a video that is linked, there is a link on YouTube in case you are interested in looking at it, of a tool that is called Heritrace, that is an editor for editing bibliographic data. We are planning to use it basically for enable experts in curating bibliographic data to help us improving the quality of the data that we have. Is an important editor since it is based also on concept that enable to track the provenance of who and when and what is the source that is used for creating and modifying the data, but also to keep track of the changes of the data that are introduced to a certain entity, in order to allow, in principle, also to revert back to the previous version of the data in case mistakes have been introduced, and this has been created in order to increase transparency of the data themselves. We are also working together with the PKP and a research group at TIB Hanover in Germany for creating a plugin for OJS, Open Journal System, that enable to crowdsource citations from OJS handled journals directly into OpenCitations. There is a link there if you want to discover more. It is something that we are going to implement within this year. And as I anticipated, we are working with a lot of communities actively in trying to devise and pushing for adoption of open science and open science infrastructure. SCOS, for sure, we have been selected by SCOS in 2020 as one of the infrastructures to support for providing that provides us an important service to the community itself. We are working in a new task force that is called COMET, that is about metadata enrichment. We are, of course, involved with the other infrastructure in the principle for open scholar infrastructure, working also in devising the new version of the principles to be adopted by the infrastructure itself. We are one of the supporters of the Barcelona Declaration on Open Research Information, and part of the Koala working group towards open infrastructure for responsible research assessment. We are active part of these two initiatives, taking part of all the activities there. And in particular, with the Barcelona Declaration, we are organizing a workshop on open citation and open scholarly metadata that will be held in Bologna at the end of May, where an entire session will be entirely dedicated to the activities of the Barcelona Declaration itself. So this is just to show you some of the communities we are involved in and the effort that we are putting within the open science infrastructure for pushing the thing and the adoption of open science infrastructures. However, there is an important point that I would like to address here that is something that is against all the principles that we have observed so far, in particular in closed service, in my opinion. It is pretty clear that it is impossible to have just one single source containing all the possible research, open research information to address all the possible needs that the possible user of this kind of information may have there. The only way to win in this scenario is that we work to make all the open science infrastructure out there handling open research information to talk with each other in a formal way, to make them interoperable, and so to have, in principle, this vision of a distributed infrastructure made of different services providing their own data that are compliant and in communication all together, and then enabled to share this data, to combine this data in a very easy way, and enable them to offer a better service to the final users. For doing that, the only way to go is to share protocols and standards that should be adopted by all this infrastructure to simplify this interoperability between them and to improve the usage by the users. And among the various initiatives that have been set up recently, there is this one where we as OpenCitations are involved directly with other infrastructure. Here there is also OpenAir involved in the sharing, OpenAlex involved in the sharing, and other infrastructure have took several discussions at the very beginning to set up their requirements and the needs, including Crossref, including data sites, just to mention a few. And here the goal is to create an interoperability framework that offer formats, data models, to enable interoperability of the data that are exposed between the various infrastructure. And to implement this idea of distributed infrastructure, we need active involvement of this infrastructure in devising and also in particular adopting these kind of protocols. And finally, just a few words at the very end. All the initiative that we are continuing to push concern the promotion of open science, its community, and it would be impossible without the effort and dedication of the people involved. Some of them are listed here, and the institutions that who have exposed our cause. As you can imagine, running an open science infrastructure, even if we are offering everything for free, comes with a cost. We have day-by-day cost to keep the infrastructure running, and here is where the community can help directly by supporting us, by doing things with us, but also by supporting our day-by-day activities by becoming a member or providing donation to us. If you are interested, there are more information available in the linked website, and that was the last slide I wanted to present to you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you, Silvio. That was fantastic. And I just want to stress the point that what OpenCitations is doing is that they're providing all the software and the data for free, and they also have a commitment never to charge for any of their services. And they do have increasing amounts of funding and increasing amounts of coverage. You've already heard the billions, they're covering billions of citation. And they have citation from different sources. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Silvio, that you have this at least the same coverage as Scopus and Clarivate.
Let's say that in previous tests that have been done on a limited data set, because to compare fully these data sets, you should have access to them in full, something that we cannot afford from an institutional point of view, let's say. But other researchers have done some sort of comparison. They have measured the kind of close comparison with those
right.
proprietary services. Yes.
And the plan is to collect citations from non-traditional literature, non-index literature, the sorts of topics that don't necessarily get their citations made visible. Thank you, Silvio. So I'm going to straight on to Jason, and he's going to tell us about OpenAlex. Thank you, Jason.
Thanks very much. I'm starting my timer. Can you hear me okay? Great. I'm starting my timer to make sure I don't go over because I have a habit of doing that. I'm going to share my screen if you'll give me a second. I just need to find it.
While you're doing that, I just want to say that we have a slightly longer OASPA webinar than usual. We're going on till a 1:15 for those who are here. Thank you.
Cool. Well, I'm just going to take all that extra space then for my presentation. I hope that's fine. Okay.
Okay.
Let me find my thing here. There we go. Okay, so hopefully you see my screen. See, I don't want a ton of slides because I want to maybe just demo a little bit what we're doing. So my name is Jason Preem. I'm the founder and director of our research, which is the nonprofit that is behind OpenAlex. We started about 12 years ago at a hackathon. I was a PhD student, and my co-founder at the time, Heather Pivovar, was a postdoc, and yeah, we just kind of stayed up all night at this hackathon, like building something, and we really enjoyed that. So we kept saying, hey, we want to build stuff to make open science a reality. We're both really excited about open science, and we built a couple things over the years. So we built something called Unpaywall that some of y'all may have heard of, something called Unsub you may have heard of. But kind of the dream for me was always, to build just the graph of everything, the connections and the items, of everything in the scholarly universe. And I was, as a researcher, I came up with this idea called altmetrics, which again, some of you may have heard of. It was all about like trying to find different ways of measuring scientific impact. And I've always really been excited about that, but I always wanted the data behind all that to be open. So when we had a chance to do that, we built OpenAlex. So OpenAlex is I guess there's kind of two parts to it, I always say, just open and Alex. So the open is kind of speaks for itself. I think we're all into open here. All of our data is CC0, so you can reuse it however you want. All of our code is MIT licensed, so you can reuse it however you want. And you can also go look it up on GitHub, just see how the whole thing works. We're a nonprofit organization, so there's no equity or anything like that to sell. We're governed by a board of directors. As an American institution, you have to have board of directors and stuff like that. And we also have an advisory board that we just launched. So you can go to our website, which I will go to right quick. And actually just the team. So we got some staff, some of those are part-time, some of those are full-time. These are our directors, and you can see I'm one of them. Some of y'all may know some of these other people. And this is our new advisory board. So you can just kind of go there and check them out if you want. So that's kind of who we are. Who uses us? We get about, so we have an API. Oh, I forgot when I was talking about open. There's not only is the data CC0 license, but it's really easy to get. So if you want to get the data, you have a couple options. You can use our API, which I'll show you in a minute. You can download the whole data as a snapshot, which is quite large, but it includes every single row of data in our database. And then you can also use the user interface, which again, I'll be demoing in a second. So there's a lot of ways to get at the data. Our API is heavily used. We get about 20 million calls or so per day to that API. And just a ton of people are using us. So we have a lot of governments use us for analysis. Oh, I forgot, that was the open. I wanted to get the Alex part first. I can't forget that. So there's OpenAlex, right? So open is the open part. And then Alex is named after the Library of Alexandria, which was an ancient library that was supposed to try and contain all of the world's knowledge. So that's kind of our vision. We actually want to contain all of the world's scholarly knowledge, not just the knowledge, but all of the sort of actors and connections in that world. So Silvia's talking about citations, and that's awesome. That's like super huge, important part of the thing. We want to cast our net even a little bit wider than that and try and say we just want to have kind of everything and all the connection between those things. So what I mean by that, I mean things like works, obviously, right, papers, data sets, software, posters, conference papers, blah, blah, blah. But then authors, so the people who are creating those, and there's a connection, right? So an author sort of creates a work. So we want to have the author, we have the works, and we have the connection between them. Then we want to have sources. So that's like journals or conferences or repositories, funders, institutions, concepts or topics that the works are about. So all of these kind of things, you can think of them as nodes, and to get maybe a little over the technical, a heterogeneous graph, right? Where like it's there's all these little dots and then all of these lines connecting them. And the citation graph is sort of one part of that graph, because it's sort of the connections from a work to another work. And then, like I said, you have the connection from a work to an author to an institution, from an author to a funder, to a journal, to a work, right? So you have all these things. So we kind of want to map all of that out. And like I said, a lot of people are really interested in this. So we have governments using us in Europe, like a lot of European governments, so Denmark, Netherlands, Austria, I think a few more kind of half using it. Like we have formal kind of collaborations with a bunch of governments. And then we have a lot of people in like kind of private sector. So pharmaceutical companies are a big one, like Bayer, GlaxoSmithKline. They're trying to do knowledge discovery using this graph, try and find, right, like bits of knowledge here and bits of knowledge here that haven't been connected, but maybe they should be. Enterprise, lots of cool like startups and stuff. Like everybody heard of Grammarly. Like Grammarly uses us to try and format citations, which I like. A lot of funders are using us to track the impact of their funding spend. We have institutions using us. So I think a little more than a year now ago, the Sorbonne here in Paris canceled their subscription to Web of Science, and they're using us instead. A lot of open source projects like this one. What is it? Yeah, so if you heard of Voss Viewer, they can make like these cool little graphs, these little visualizations of the graphs. And they use our data, among others. So there's a lot of others open source projects, because the data is all open, right? So they can use it, which is pretty cool. And yeah, I think that's kind of the main people using it. So I wanted to kind of, I guess, stop talking about it as much. It's kind of easier if you just show it. So this is the front page. If you go to, as you see, OpenAlex.org up here, you can just kind of play with it yourself. So I might want to start off by searching for Claudia Golden. Okay, so that's who we're looking for, that author. So what I see here is kind of a search results page, a bit like Google or something. So we got one filter where the author is Claudia Golden, and then we're just going to see all of her works here. So there's 489 results, it looks like. 31% of them are open access. Maybe I want to just only read the open access one, so I just click on that. So I got another filter, right? So, and also the work is open access. So you can see, you can kind of stack these filters. So you can look at a particular person's output. If I wanted to go and dive into this grand gender convergence, I can just click on it, and then you can see I can go get the PDF. I can link directly to this, get the abstract, all these kinds of things. This is pretty cool because I was mentioning the API. So everything on the user interface is backed by our own API. So we're one of our biggest users of our API. So if you wanted to build your own version of OpenAlex, the website, you could, just using our API. You'd just be another user just like us, which I think is pretty fun. And that's all the back, like there's quite a lot of information like behind that one website. But if you wanted to like kind of dive in, let me check out Harvard University. I've heard of those guys before. Or you could say, hey, who is citing this work, right? So cited, or who's cited from this work, right? So cited by this work. Or if I want to go back, I can do the opposite, right? So I could say it's cited by these works. So who's incoming citations, right? So you can kind of do that like citation traversal type stuff. And then at any given point, you've got this breakdown, right? Of like what years, what the open access is, what topics they're on, kind of unsurprising, what institution they're from, and whether they're articles or book chapters or preprints, whatever. You can add new little kind of widgets here to examine it from a different way. So you can say like, how many times have these totally been cited? You can say, what was the APC that was spent for these? And this is kind of a weird one to ask, but let's say maybe instead of that, let's actually look for an institution. So I'm going to search for my own alma mater, University of Florida. And we'll just look at works that were published by the University of Florida. That's about this many. Been cited a lot. I'm not interested in that right this second. Let's instead look and see how much money was paid to publish these works. So a lot of money, right? $84 million. Maybe I only want to look at, stuff published, more recently or whatever. But yeah, so you can kind of see, you can like just sort of browse around this in a lot of different ways. I think I probably don't have time to dig into like all different ways. I know that since we're doing publishing, a lot of interested in sources, so we can look at what the sources are, including like what repositories do we get data from. So that's kind of like what the UI looks like right now. And like I said, all of this is backed by the API, so you can do all these API queries yourself if you want to. I also wanted to kind of real quick show the new thing, which I'm really excited about. This is going to come in the spring, so should be able to look at it in April. This is the analytics version, so it allows a little bit less focused on search, a little bit more on these analytics questions. So I will you just pick, I guess, kind of randomly what's the cool. Oh, we'll look at sources. So these are just like example questions that you can play with. So what sources does OpenAlex index? So this is a totally different user interface as you can see, but the kind of point of it is that we're going to get a tabular result set. We're going to pick what we're looking for. So we're looking for sources in this case, and then we'll just filter by is that source a journal or not, right? And what's cool is I could just like, download, pick a few of these. If I want, I could just download them and I'll just download them right to my machine, which is neat. What's also cool is that I could just do this. I'll select all 200,000 and I can actually download that. So it'll take about 10 minutes, but I'm going to get an email with a CSV of everything I wanted to download. And instead of just counting the works for each of these sources, we can ask more interesting questions like, okay, what was their mean field-weighted citation index? If this is going to take a second to calculate, but field-weighted citation index is an approach to trying to normalize the citations. So we just kind of normalize, put all of the works in the same bucket, where a bucket is works that have the same year, they're published in the same year, they're about the same topic, and they also, they're the same type of article. So like reviews with reviews and, editorials with editorials. And then we can kind of see, well, a 1 would be your incoming citations are the same, you exactly average, and then a 2 would be twice the average, and a 0.5 would be half the average. So we can kind of see, and we could sort if we wanted to, and see, well, which are the top field-weighted citations. And maybe we want to make sure that we are only looking at works. Let's see, actually, let me stop doing sources because we got other ones that I want to look at too right quick. We can also do things like countries. So people want to do like country level data a lot of times. So we're again sorting by works, and maybe we only want to though examine works that are open access. So this is the number of works in this country that are open access. So you see we can and this is all done in real time. So this is being calculated right now while we wait. And so tomorrow you're gonna have slightly different numbers. And so this is going to take a second, but you'll be able to say how many open access works published in the United States, America, China, and all these other different places. And then, like I said, you can do lots of things other than countries. So you can look at funders. You can look at languages, even based on language. You can look based on license, based on SDGs. A really popular one. Oh, and then I guess the last one, while I'm almost out of time, is you can make a label. So let's look at people. Where's that? Authors. Yeah, sorry. Let's look at authors. And we're going to look at authors. We'll say again at a particular institution. I'll do University of Florida again, because I'm partial to that particular one. Okay, I'll get rid of this open access filter, although we could still keep using it. And then maybe I wanted to have a list of a particular set of users at the University of Florida, like maybe the ones who are doing work in chemistry. So once this is done, I'll set up another filter. So these are University of Florida authors. Now I'm going to just kind of examine the ones who maybe are doing chemistry-related work. I think chemistry would be too broad of a, but it doesn't matter. Let's say analytical chemistry, why not? So if I was the chemistry department at the University of Florida, I might want to kind of save this search. So I might say, okay, well, I know who these people are. I'm just going to pick these, however many that is. And this person's not really in the chemistry department, but this person is. So I'm going to pick all those, and now I'm going to assign them a label. And then I'm just going to put UF department. And then I can create that label. And then in the future, I can go to my labels, and I can get that anytime I want, where I can see these people, and I can sorry, I can actually like, I can create a filter that says, I only want people, sorry, this is the filter. I only want people with this particular label. Let me see where I find it. This is still new, so I can't find the label right this second. But you get the idea. I could search for people who just have that label, which would be pretty handy. And like I said, I can download any size thing I want. In fact, if I just wanted to say, here's all 270 million works, I can actually just do this and say, I just want to download all 270 million works of the CSV. And I can totally do that. I'm not going to because it takes a couple hours, but I'll just get an email that says, get them in a couple hours. So that's pretty much it. That's the new interface. I'm really excited. It comes out in April. Same thing, it's all backed by the same API and stuff. The other thing that's really exciting in April, we're going to be doing a bunch of data quality improvements and also expanding the scope. So if you look at the API for OpenAlex right now, so this is I'm going to get rid of this filter. This is the current version. So let me copy that. I'm going to paste it into my browser. So this is all the works, and you can see that there are, oh, that's sources, sorry. I'm going to edit the API directly here. You can see there are about 264 million works in OpenAlex right now. But in the new one that we're working on, which again will launch in the spring, in Q2, I think, V2 works right there. Now all of a sudden we've got 370 million works. So I'm really excited about this new version that comes out in spring. It's just like, we really want to be totally comprehensive, and I think we're getting there. And then, like I said, some of the areas we need to work on are definitely sort of the data quality. It's a hard job, especially when you're trying to be very expansive in your coverage, as we are. So like author name disambiguation, you know, making sure which John Smith is the correct John Smith that we're supposed to be assigning those works to. Institution assignment. So making sure we understand when someone writes Florida, comma, are they talking about the University of Florida? Are they talking about Florida A&M University? Are they talking about the state of Florida? You know, so those kind of problems, those are things that we'll be working a lot in the spring as well. And that's it.
That's great. Thank you so much, Jason. And also, I know this it might seem obvious to you, but one of the things that OpenAlex does is index stuff that isn't indexed by Clarivate, Google, Scopus, other things, non-traditional outputs and stuff, which is really, really important in terms of trying to look at the knowledge graph, measure impact, and for more societal type of applications. So it's fantastic. Right, Vincent, over to you, and then we'll go with the questions. Thank you.
All right, let me try
Jason.
to share quickly this screen. This should be visible now. Hi, everyone. I'm Vincent. I'm the CEO of Thoth Open Metadata, and we're going to talk about Thoth. So when we started this project, which has since turned into a community interest company based in the UK, so it's a non-profit, this has been the basis. There's no open access without open infrastructure, and I think that all the presentations today kind of resonate with that specific statement. We won't be able to make all publicly funded knowledge publicly available without also making sure that the infrastructures through which this happens are open. And so we started from basically with a problem is that if you are a small open access publisher, if you're a small library-based publisher, if you're a small scholar-led publisher, independent, publishing scholarly work, getting your books out into the world is often very difficult. It's not enough just to publish the book and get it on Amazon and then you're done. As we have seen, the book needs to go into all kinds of other different infrastructures that improve the discoverability of the book itself. And for that, you need good metadata, and you need metadata in many different formats, and these many different formats need to go in many different places. And that's what Thoth was developed to solve. Also making these metadata, by the way, CC0 licensed on an open platform. Source code is open via GitHub under an open license. Extensive documentation. We also wanted to build something that is made for open access book metadata first. I mean, we can also deal with closed book metadata, but we really want to put open access at the forefront. Persistent IDs are very useful in terms of data correlation, as Jason just has shown. You can make all kinds of nice selections through API queries. This is a little bit how it looks in the backend. This is a bit dated, I think, now. At this moment, we have, I think, about 40-something publishers, about 3,000 books, and I think about 15,000 chapters in there, and we're rapidly onboarding a lot of publishers. It's kind of it's going really quite well. Here you can see like how we include DOI numbers, open access open licenses. Many of the publishers that we serve have different ways of getting their books out there by themselves or through us. You can keep track of these locations of particular books in specific platforms. Again, persistent identifiers, something like a ROR-ID or ORCIDs. These are all very important components of the way that we gather the metadata on books and chapters. Then the main hurdle for the publisher is actually getting all of this metadata out. This is where we are there to help. So this is, I think, our current overview of the outputs and platforms that we deliver to. We're constantly developing new output formats when necessary. We're constantly trying to find new platforms to give our metadata to. I think the main thing we're currently working on is on actually passively exposing our data through OAI PMH, so that also OpenAlex can get our data, because I was doing a quick search in OpenAlex, and I think you could really use the data that we have to offer. So we are working hard on also exposing the entire data set of Thoth, such that it can be harvested. And we also have a bunch of open APIs that you can query. As with OpenAlex, you can just go to the website thoth.pub and extract any type of information you want from our data set. Can generate all these nice kind of stable URLs that allow you to, for example, that allows me every year to get a full list of all the books that Fountain Books has published in specific formats, and many ways in which you can get those data also through nice user interfaces. And as I said, they are all CC0 licensed. What we are currently working on as well is to more tightly integrate with third-party platforms. Much of this distribution work is still very much manual labor. You have to send an email, you have to upload something to a FTP server, or somebody wants to have you to fill in an online form to add the metadata and so on. And so like all of this is manual labor, and we would very much like to automate sending things anywhere they can go. And so we have been slowly developing collaborations to do so. One of them is with the Open Book Collective. The Open Book Collective is a funding initiative that reaches out to libraries to collectively fund open access publishing and infrastructure initiatives. And so we provide the entire catalog of the Open Book Collective. For example, we have built a white label website on top of Thoth. So if you are a beginning publisher in doing open access books, you can basically take this a basic website, use Thoth, and use the two together. So you immediately have a representation of your entire catalog that is in Thoth as a website, and you add a few, fixed pages about, about us, information about reviews and so on. But the main core of any publisher website is always the catalog, and so we have fully integrated that into a web environment that is also available under an open license. We are currently working with Koki on developing widgets to generate usage data, right? So we distribute currently on behalf of publishers their books to many different platforms, but it would also be very nice if we can then also get back usage data for that. And so we're developing several desktop widgets that allow publishers insight into the way their books are being used on those platforms, rather than them individually getting these data from these different platforms. We again try to bring that back in a streamlined way. we are in a close collaboration with Open Monograph Press, with PKP and their book production piece of software, Open Monograph Press, such that when you use OMP as part of your production pipeline, putting metadata into OMP will automatically reflect those in Thoth if you have an account with us as well. And so that allows you to manage your book production with an OMP and at the same time then have all the distributive functions of Thoth without duplicating metadata entries. We also are now an intermediary with Crossref. So when a publisher comes to us, a small publisher, they don't have their own connection with Crossref to register DOIs. We can do that on their behalf, and that's fully free. So the costs are waived, and we register the publisher's DOIs on their behalf whenever they tell us to. Different from other platforms, we register the DOIs under the prefix of the publisher. So it's not that Thoth assigns a DOI to the book. We do so on behalf of a publisher under a publisher-specific prefix. So you always maintain ownership of the DOI number. You are the one who can edit it, and that's not necessarily us. If you choose to go somewhere else, then you can just take your books and your DOI management, take it with you. And this is an important aspect of what we're doing at Thoth, is that we do not want to become a fluke, a trap for your metadata. You should always be able just to export everything and go somewhere else if that's what you want to do. Crossmark, we recently also started supporting. I'm just going through this because I would like to have some time for discussion. And we're developing also a close relationship with OAPEN to automate ingest into OAPEN as well. JStorm, Muse, part of the service we offer as well is archiving. There are several commercial archiving solutions that are currently on the market. They are very expensive. It is not entirely clear whether they actually work in terms of like making a book available once a certain catastrophic event has occurred. And so we thought that rather than having these closed black boxes that are archiving solutions, we need something that's open and auditable. So we've been developing relations with both Zenodo and Internet Archive to provide an open archiving network where both the metadata, the book file itself, and a set of, for example, if you have a multimedia publication like with the videos and so on, all of that is stored together, working exactly the same way as would, for example, something like Portico work, but open, auditable, and at no cost. Another thing that we, so a lot of the things that we develop is in constant collaboration and conversation with our publishers. And so one of the things that has come up recently is that in order for us to know that we distribute the most recent version, we need to be able to check whether a PDF is actually the most recent PDF. And rather than us sending an email like, is this the correct one? The link of which you uploaded 2 years ago, is this still the right one? We now also offer hosting services to publishers, which allows them, again, not necessarily to host it under Thoth, but we basically provide web space server space to a publisher. They can use that under their own domain name, for example, books.punctonbooks.com. But we would also have access to those servers such that we can run checksums on the PDFs and make sure that these are the ones that we're actually distributing, making, again, the whole process much easier, while at the same time securing the fact that it is actually under the publisher's name that these books are hosted. So we're not a repository in the sense that, you send your book somewhere and then somebody else has it. We constantly want to emphasize that it's your data, it's your metadata. And I think this is an important aspect of what we do. Funding, I also saw some funding questions in the chat already about some of the other presentations. Funding is always an issue because when you do open stuff, it benefits everyone, but when it benefits everyone, not everyone wants to pay for it. And so we have 2 funding streams at the moment that are important. First of all is through the Open Book Collective, which I introduced before, is this collective funding strategy aimed at university libraries. And the other one is basically what is called a freemium service. The basic functionalities of Thoth are all available for free. Management of metadata, import, export, sending things anywhere you want. But if you want curated services, if you want us to take over part, of your metadata management, if you want us to create chapter metadata for you, if you want us to enrich metadata of your back catalog. So all of these additional, more labor-intensive, more difficult to automate aspects of metadata management, it comes at a price that is priced per book. And so in this way, we on the one hand allow anyone to use Thoth. It's free, you can use it, you can just create an account, it doesn't cost anything. If you want more service from us, more care, then that comes at a modest price. What are we working on? Do I have some time, Katrina, or am I going totally over time? I saw you popping up.
No, I think you're okay. You're okay. Right. You're on track. You've got a few minutes. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I'm rounding it off. Okay. Automated dissemination. Again, this is really important as we scale up, that as many of the platforms that we connect to have a way of allowing us to automatically accept metadata and data. The different pipelines for that are fascinating, but I'm not going to talk about them. We're working on a new UX. We're working on a so-called traffic light system. It's already in place, but it will, together with UX, it will materialize more visually in the interface, which basically nudges publishers to enrich their metadata up to the point such that they are eligible for distribution in certain platforms. And in this way, for example, we can say, well, if you fill in this and this and this and this metadata field, we can deposit your work at JSTOR, or we can deposit your work at Muse. And so this also allows us to nudge publishers to make their metadata richer and better by pointing at the advantage of doing so, namely a wider distribution. We're working on also making Thoth available in different languages, especially as we are collaborating with Shello and have rather large a group of Latin American publishers being onboarded at the moment, and we want to be able for people to use Thoth ideally in a language that is familiar to them. Usage metrics I already talked about. Legal deposit is an interesting question. It's very different from country to country. How that is done. Perhaps this can also, again, be automated in order to take, again, a barrier away for a publisher to get their book out into the world. ISBN registration is an equally, thorny thing to solve, again, probably on a country-by-country basis, and the OMI-PMH exposure as well, again, to get our metadata in many more different places, including OpenAlex. And finally, which is a very exciting development, is to thinking about how can Thoth be useful towards libraries, right? So we've served publishers, our clients are currently publishers, those are the people that use Thoth, but we have been having over the last 12 years rather interesting conversations with librarians that are looking at Thoth as a very rich catalog of open access book metadata, and how can that possibly interface in a more tight manner with library management systems. And with that, I am going to shut up. If you want to reach out, feel free to email us, and I give it back to Katrina.
Thank you, Vincent. And what's so exciting about Thoth is it's essentially going to enable monographs, book chapters to be as discoverable as any journal article. And often I think books and book chapters have been a second-class citizen, and the wealth of information and being able to mine that, track it, and demonstrate its impact is enormously huge. Thank you so much. So perhaps if all the speakers could switch on their audio as well. I just wanted to ask one question from myself to all of you, and perhaps you could just also, if you've got any responses to the other presentations you've seen, and that's to speak to Silvio's point, is that there's all these new open infrastructure tools popping up. They've all got different types of uses. but librarians, publishers, researchers need to access all of them easily. They don't want to be having multiple plugins, and how do you get into different APIs and all of this stuff. What's to that? How can you make it as friction-free, whether you've got a publisher, a startup, a library, a researcher, to use all these systems together?
So if I may enter in the discussion, since I've already mentioned something about that during my presentation. I mean, I have to confess, I'm a computer scientist. Okay, so I used to work with web technologies since the very beginning of my career, and I care a lot about, in particular, interoperability in the web sphere and so on. I've worked a lot on that specific aspects in terms of sharing data in a way that can be reusable, interoperable, and understandable, and also mechanisms for enabling this sharing. So I think that these kind of initiatives that set up common protocols is currently the only way to go if we want really a distributed environment that enable and simplify life to user, because this is the main point. I mean, all the infrastructure out there, us that we have presented here, but not only us, also other infrastructure that are available out there offer incredible, amazing services for the community. The point is that often a user needs a piece of information from one infrastructure that should be combined by another piece of information from another infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And this is even more amplified if we consider local infrastructure within, for instance, institutions like internal repositories and these kind of things. So agreeing on common formats, data models for exchanging data, and to make all these data interoperable and talkable with each other, to me, is the only way to go. These bring in two main complexities. The first one is technological complexity, which to me is not the most difficult one to achieve, because we do have technologies out there that allows us to solve the problem. And the most difficult one is the social complexity. So we need to agree as open science infrastructure to adopt these models, to adopt these common API specifications, because at the end of the story, if we will be able to work in that direction, what we are offering is an incredible distributed source of information for all the users out there. And I'm talking about users, common users, scientific users, scholarly users, but also companies that wants to create services upon those data. So it's, let's say, very complementary set of different kind of users there.
If we can get there. Vincent and Jason, I'll just ask you very quickly to respond to that, and then we'll move on to the others.
I mean, I completely agree with Silvio. Working on Thoth, I think we've been working on it for now maybe 6 years or something, maybe 7 years. I don't know exactly anymore. Finding that many of the commercial or even non-profit platforms that exist for, in our case, particular ebook distribution, do not adhere to common standards, do not adhere to open standards. There is no agreement among all these different platforms, even to encode a country, even though there is a totally acceptable ISO standard for this. And so to get everybody in line to use the same way of, denoting the Netherlands with the same code, that is a lot of work. Let alone using ORCIDs or WAR IDs or all these other all these other permanent identifiers that make that create the possibility of this interoperability. Apart from the technical aspect of putting all the pipes together. And so this is something that we really need to solve, and unfortunately, it only goes by kind of talking with each other, and then somebody saying, "Well, my standard is the best one."
And that's where SKGIF comes in, which I think is great. Jason, do you want to just have a quick comment on that?
I think, it's like arguing against puppies. Like, I'm in favor of everyone conforming to the same standard. Like, I don't think anyone would disagree with that. But I would say, probably to me, I think we emphasize that a lot less. I feel like it might be a little overemphasized because for me, like actual technical interoperability is the important thing. Like if there's a lot of open projects out there that, you know, if their API can't handle millions of calls per day, they're not very useful, I would say, in a practical like world. I don't really mind, like at the end of the day, if they want to use the 2-letter ISO code or 3-level ISO code, or they want to make their whole own one up and write the Netherlands or whatever, like that's super annoying. I would totally agree with you, Vincent. I would way prefer they just use the 2-letter ISO code. That works great. But I can write a parser that will do that, especially with like Cursor or Windsurf. I can write that parser in an hour and it's fine. But what I can't do is actually get that data at scale. So to me, what I would prefer the purchase personally, in our experience, we work with a lot of like OAI PMH endpoints, you know, Archive is a famous one. I love Archive. They've been around for many decades, few decades. They're an anchor, you know, I'm a huge supporter of them, but I will say at the same time that like folks who try to harvest from Archive are currently like struggling because their PMA servers just can't really handle a lot of traffic, and they're working on fixing that. Again, good for them. But I think that like definitely not trying to throw them on the bus here because we've had that same kinds of problems too. But I would just say that to me should be the focus, is make sure that we have the technical interoperability. That's, I think, a little bit more idiosyncratic take on it, but that's where we come from.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on to the audience. Thank you. I think scalability and ease of use is key. The Vincent and Jason, so we do have a look through the questions. I'm going to start off with these and pick up on any ones you'd particularly like to answer. We've got a lot. I'm going to ask a very obvious one for Jason, and this is a publisher's perspective. How on earth are you calculating APCs? Jason?
So, well, we get it from two places. There's a lot of work to be done to get that data good. You know, I would say we're definitely kind of like, hey, let's work with what we've got and we'll keep improving it. The two locations are DOAJ, which has that data, and the OpenAPC project. So I think between the two of them, they cover, I don't know, way less than half, we'll say, of the APC data. And that APC data is quite often wrong, particularly from DOAJ, because a lot of people aren't paying list price anymore. And DOAJ gathers list price. So I would say that it's like very difficult to get extremely accurate data. We're going to calculate all the data we can. Big believer in the OpenAPC project. I'd love to see more people dive into that. And we will continue to gather data wherever we can find it.
Yeah. Okay, this is one for all of you. Do you only ever include outputs with a DOI? Does every output, because there's a lot of stuff out there without DOIs. What happens to that?
I mean, yeah, I think all of us started with DOI as a first choice because there is already a lot of information out there with that. But that was one problem that we addressed since the very beginning, because I work in a classical philology department, okay, where a lot of research produced here is published in places that do not have a DOI at all. They may have different kind of identifiers. So in some cases, they do not have any identifier at all. So what we have developed within OpenCitation, in particular with the advent of OpenCitation Meta, is to provide a service that is able also to ingest information that do not have necessarily external identifier. We do assign a persistent internal identifier that is the OpenCitations Meta identifier exactly for that. So to provide an internal way to identify that record persistently. And so thanks to that, currently in OpenCitation, we do have a lot of bibliographic information and citations that involve this bibliographic information that do not have any DOI specified at all. And that is the plan. We would like to extend the coverage, also including records that do not have the usual persistent identifier. I'm thinking about, just to mention something, software. Software is a huge thing right now, in particular in the computer science domain, and a lot of software do not have any DOI at all, even if it is cited or mentioned at least within articles. So this is just to mention one part of it, but also if we may refer to manuscripts, if we move to the humanities domain that do not have for sure a DOI, but it is important to identify them for citations.
Vincent?
Yeah, I mean, DIs are super useful, and so we obviously, as we grow, we are getting a lot of back catalogs of books that do not necessarily have DOIs, which is why we offer free DOI registration. So just when you use Thoth, you get a DOI on your record, whether you want it or not. It's yours, but it will get one.
And Jason?
Yeah, I just checked. We have 170 million works that have DOIs and 93 million works that do not have DOIs.
Which is great. So it shows that it is possible. But although at the moment, with the DOI, you're more discoverable than without a DOI. And that's life. And that's why we have to provide, and there's places like Crossref and OASPA indeed helps with that as well. Okay, I'm going to just jump down to one from Neve Brennan for you, Jason. So are there plans to provide a tool for institutions to consolidate their institutional name variants in OpenAlex? We'd find that really useful. Need to add affiliated institutions, training, hospitals, etc. prior to doing analysis.
Mm-hmm. Yes and no. No, because there already is one. If you go to Works Magnet, I think you can find it on Google now, but that was a project that the Ministry of Education of France did with, I think, Eric Jean Giraud leading the way on that. Fantastic Works, open source tool built on our open source data. And you can use that Works Magnet tool to curate name variants, which can then get automatically submitted to OpenAlex. So it's just super cool, I think, example of how technical interoperability can create like community. So that's the best way to do it right now. So that's the no. No, we're not going to do it because I already did. Yes, we are going to do it because I think it would be cool to have tighter integration. So in the future, yeah, I think we will probably build that into OpenAlex proper. But for now, you would use that third-party tool, which works great. We get like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of those every week for sure. Thank you for the link, Bernie.
Okay, thank you. Vince, one for you. Has Thoth looked into the Opera's metric aggregation platform to bring together usage data?
Yeah, I mean, we have looked into all different platforms. And in fact, our lead developer developed that for Operas. So we are, we have.
Okay, that's great. I'm spotting around. There's one.
While you spot, I can quickly answer the Wikidata question because we do get that quite a lot. The issue is that Wikidata does not have the capacity of actually
Vincent, what is the Wikidata question?
Sorry, there's a Wikidata question. Do you feed any of your aggregated data into Wikidata? We have been having multiple conversations with different people at Wikidata. It's a slightly opaque organization in terms of who you need to talk to. And the main issue is that they are getting already a lot of data and they are not sure whether they want so much more. So it's close to actually what Jason was talking about. And, can you handle millions of API queries? Do you have enough personnel to actually, get all that data? And in the case of Wikidata, I think the answer so far has been no.
I can link with that because I've worked with a lot of the guys there when there was WikiCite as an active community a few years ago. And the problem was exactly that one, that there was an overwhelming presence of bibliographic resources beyond every expectation that, the community wasn't so happy about it. But just to clarify here, our side, we are trying. So this concept of interoperability and to interlink in different open infrastructure is something that we will want to push a lot. And so we do handle a lot of external identifier exactly for creating this interlink. For instance, we are interlinked with OpenAlex in our system because we do include alignment between OpenAlex ID and OpenCitations ID exactly for enabling paths to move from one infrastructure to another kind of easily. And we have also included, even if we do not have a lot of data about that in OpenCitations, we do also include Wikidata ID among the identifiers that we are handling, exactly for doing the same job of cross-linking between different infrastructure. And as far as I know, for instance, Wikidata is using us for enriching some of the records that they have systematically through Scholia, for instance, as a tool as well, that is using a lot of the information that we do have. They push them within Wikidata and also reuse some of our ontologies for classifying citation intents within Wikidata itself. So there are active reuse and collaboration in that direction. in the other way around, including Wikidata should pass through let's say, a appropriate curation activity, I would say, because they do have a lot of very interesting things, but the fact that anyone in the community can bring in information may be problematic from some perspectives, and that is when provenance and change tracking, to me, has a huge responsibility there, because it allows you to be transparent, keep track of who have done what, from where you are taking the data, in order to allow also users to exclude some data if they don't want to use it, for instance.
This is a question about the SDGs for Jason. How do you define research topics that content is assigned to and mapped content? How do you map content to the SDGs within your?
That is a question.
It's about taxonomy, I suppose.
Yeah, that's and I apologize. I have to leave kind of right on time because I have another meeting. But it's just a short question with a very long and involved answer. On our website, if you look through the documentation, we've got a lot of pointers to what we call aboutness, which is basically all of the ways you might classify what a work is about. So we have concepts, topics, fields, domains, subfields, SDGs, and we're adding more all the time. That's something people are really interested in, which is great. We classify those automatically. We train an algorithm to do it. In the case of SDGs, we actually worked with the community. There's a project called Aurora, which is funded by some subset of Europe, the European government thing. And so yeah, I would look into that. We actually contributed a little bit to that project. They contributed a ton to us. So I think it's a good example of how you can kind of use community-based stuff to work together.
Okay, thank you. We've got 3 minutes left, and if Jason's got to leave, we're going to leave on time. I just want to say that what we try and do is, for any unanswered questions, we try and feed them back to the poor speakers, get them to answer them, and it comes out in a blog post at some point. So we hope that will happen. Is there any question that any of you have spotted that you urgently want to ask? Otherwise, I wanted to just talk in the last 2 minutes about how on earth this gets funded, which has come up in the chat for a few times. No, okay.
I talked about funding, so I'm in the clear for this.
That's right, but how do we? I mean, you're not making money.
Okay, so my main bullet point around funding is the following: scholarly communications costs money. It is not something that generates money. This is a public good. It deserves to be funded by the public, by the government, because it is for the public. So it is never going to generate huge amounts of profits. We have to everywhere emphasize that education is a human right, and the funding for these types of initiatives follows straight from that.
So I agree. The hard thing is that funding is limited, and not all the funders are going to fund every single infrastructure coming out. They hardly fund anything. So Silvio and Jason, how are you going to persist?
So for what concerns fundings of OpenCitations, what it happens right now is that the OpenCitation is here because of the community. So we have a very peculiar, I will say, business model. We do not ask for fees for using services, because this is not what we want to follow. We ask direct commitment by the community. And right now, we have among the members and the donors, mainly institutions, libraries in particular, that have supported us, because we are providing service and data that are useful to them. So they are supporting our day-by-day activity in this way. That is not the only way to go.
Silvio, apologies, I'm just going to interrupt so Jason can just have his say before.
Yeah, thanks. I can keep it real simple. We have 2 funding sources. One of them is philanthropic funding. We're currently funded by the Arcadia Fund and then the Navigation Fund, which have both been very generous. We also have got a premium subscription plan. So the data is totally free, but people can sign up for extra high, like 2 million calls a day or something like that, API limits. A lot of people have been willing to do that. And so our annual recurring revenue has been going up and up. We currently get about nearly $600,000 a year on that. And we're just going to keep making that work. So those are kind of our 2 funding sources.
Yeah, I think the fundamental thing is you're providing something of huge value. And if it's useful, it will get funded. And I think that's what the three of you are creating. There will be some infrastructures that fail. But if it is of use and it's being adopted, that is the best measure of the way that I think you can show its value. And okay. Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. I think this is a huge topic. We could go on for hours. And I wish you all the success in adoption and getting more adoption and getting the word out there about the importance of this.